Hey everyone, Micah here with Ebike School, and today we're going to be testing out a couple of electric UTVs from Kandi. Just in case you're worried, this is not going to be one of those cookie cutter, shiny, barely get your hands dirty reviews where someone walks around a dealership and points out the suspension specs and winch figures. Oh, we'll go over that stuff, don't worry, but this is the real deal. My dad and I spent the past couple weeks using these machines around the property under real-world conditions, doing the kind of work we do every day to see how these vehicles actually perform in the real world. If you're new to my channel, welcome! This is where awesome and useful electric vehicles come to be truly tested. Now Kandi was kind enough to help me get my hands on the pair of these so I could test both of them out, see what makes them different, similar, and basically have a lot of fun testing these out in different scenarios. I've actually been looking at electric UTVs to have here on my parents' property. I know when I was on Kandi's site, I was looking to try and determine what the difference was between these two models, and it was actually a bit confusing. In fact, they're almost identical. The only differences are really what you're looking at right here in the front. It's basically the front fascia on these machines. Over here, this is the Kandi Cowboy, and this one has a different front end. The frame extends out over the hood and the front fascia here. It's got different headlights, whereas opposed to the Kandi Innovator on this side, we've got a central light bar, some sleeker headlights here. The frame is actually underneath the fascia. It doesn't come out like a bash guard here. And this one has a frunk in front of it. It's not a huge frunk or a front trunk, but it is decently large. You can put some tools in there. It's got some drain holes, so you can even fill it with ice and, you know, put drinks in there if you're tailgating, something like that. But basically everything else on these machines is the same. The drivetrain, all the electronics, all of the chassis, the same winches, the same cargo beds, the same everything else. So it's really just a matter of aesthetics with the front ends of both of these machines. But enough talking about the machines, let's start testing them out. Immediately upon Kandi dropping off the two UTVs, my dad and I hopped in one and took it on our first test ride just to see how it felt. And I gotta say, it was immediately pretty impressive.
God, this is the smoothest freaking vehicle.
Yeah, it rides well, right?
This is wonderful. After 100 meters, I have fallen in love with this thing.
Now what you're hearing is mostly the springs and the suspension compressing, largely because there's just not much motor noise. These are dual motor side-by-sides, one motor in the front and one in the rear, giving it all-wheel drive. But they're just so whisper quiet that you really only hear the suspension and the tires, two things you usually can't hear on a conventional UTV due to the engine and exhaust noise.
It's just rides so nice.
Now we do take it out onto the open road a bit here, and when you step on that throttle, you can actually hear the two motors winding up a bit more, though they're quickly drowned out by the tire roar of those knobby tires on asphalt doing 40 miles an hour.
Open it up.
Now I should mention that this is not a street legal vehicle. It's designed and intended for off-road use only. We're in a rural farming community here, and these types of vehicles are commonly tolerated as long as you're not becoming a problem on the roads, but don't go saying Micah said I can drive these on the road, because technically you cannot in most places. This road here is awful, and so it's a good test of the suspension, and of the neighbor's dog's ability to keep up. The UTV has double wishbone independent suspension on all four wheels, and it actually works quite well. These aren't cheap novelty shocks. This stuff works, and it's designed for work. After returning from our first short shakedown ride, we took the chance to start playing with a few of the various features of the UTV until the dinner bell rang. That was the end of playing around for the first day, though as the sun went down, it was a great chance to check out the main difference between the two vehicles, mainly the headlights, at night. With the start of a new day came the start of new chores. First up on the list was a hay run. We needed a bunch of straw for seeding grass near the house, and that meant a run down to the local feed store. Again, these technically are not street legal vehicles, but when you live in a farming community and you have an orange triangle, you get a bit more leeway in some places. The feed store was also only a few miles away, so we're not exactly making a road trip here. Plus, it was a good chance to make sure the Kandi could really get up to that 40-mile-an-hour top speed that it claims in the manual. The rear bed of the Kandi UTV is roughly the same size as really any other side-by-side out there, and it's got 4 nice hardpoints for tying down loads. That's great for all sorts of weird stuff you might put back there, especially when you've got the tailgate down like I do here. I'm not quite sure what the max loading of the bed is. There's a sticker on it that says max load 440 pounds, but the manual says the max load is 1,250 pounds. I've got 8 straw bales here, and I didn't get a chance to weigh them, but Google tells me these things weigh 50 to 60 pounds on average, so this should be right around 440 pounds of straw right here. When we took off with the load, you could feel a slight difference in the ride, but barely. I don't think this was enough weight for the dual motors to even notice, and they definitely didn't sound like they were working any harder under the full bed. This was also a good chance to test out that dump feature. There's an electronic lift built into the bed, and you can access it either from the main dash or from a button on the side of the driver's seat if you're standing outside of the UTV. Instead of unloading 400 something pounds of straw by hand, this is definitely easier. You might think that dump feature is a novelty, but we found it to be really useful. We usually collect the mulched grass clippings after mowing the lawn when it gets really tall, since they're great to add into the compost pile. When you have a full bed of anything like this, be it grass, straw, mulch, compost, sand, whatever, it's nice to not have to rake or shovel that stuff back out of the bed when you can just go dump it wherever you want. Though depending on what you're dumping, you may still have to help the lightweight stuff like grass out at the end. Now, one thing that I think I should point out here that has impressed us so far with just the bit of testing we've already done is simply how nimble the vehicle is. This area of the property can be a bit tricky to wiggle around in with the trees and the hose pole and everything else there, but the Kandi has a pretty darn tight turning radius and seems to wiggle around just fine. It actually even has electric power steering, which is normally an upgrade on a lot of UTVs, but it's nice to see it come standard here. In fact, you can see how easy one-finger steering is. Of course, being nimble is one thing, power is another, and we wanted to test out the towing capacity of the machine. It's rated for 2,500 pounds of towing, so we thought, why not try and pull a 9,000 pound shipping container? We put some lifting straps on the container corners after we rigged it up with easy Y wheels, more on those in just a moment, and then it was just a matter of lining up and giving it the old college try. To my amazement, at nearly 4 times the rated towing capacity, I actually got rolling with that container. And then I got stuck with one of the container wheels in a bit of a divot that I couldn't overcome, even with the Kandi's all-wheel drive. So my dad took out our Nesher electric loader and gave the container just a bit of a push to get it out of the hole, and then I was able to finish towing the container again so we can get it out into our back pasture. Since we had to get a bit of a boost from the tractor, I'm not sure if I'd exactly call this a success or not, but that is 9,000 pounds of steel getting pulled along by a side-by-side, and so I'm pretty happy about that. Now, I promised I'd mention these things because I think these are the coolest little tools ever. They're called Easy Y wheels and they're made in the US. You can lift up a container and then you pop them right in those ISO pockets in the corners. If you've got a big enough forklift or loader to lift a container, you just need 2 wheels and then your vehicle drags it around from the other side. In this case, we put 4 wheels on and then we just towed the container. It's a cool way to move a shipping container without a crane all by yourself with simply a forklift or a truck or in this case an electric UTV. Now I should back up here though and point out one of the few problems we experienced with the machine during this towing test. When I first went to put my tow hitch into the 2-inch receiver, it wouldn't fit. I think that the receiver on the UTV is cast because there was what looked like a little lip of flashing left in the 2-inch square hole that was making the hole too small. But with a bit of quick filing, I was able to knock down the flashing on the edge. Also, just FYI, that's a key-shaped multi-tool. No, I'm not messing up my house key here. Then with the majority of that little lip knocked down, and a bit of elbow grease for good measure, I was able to get that hitch in. I only had to do that the first time, and then the receiver was fixed and good to go. I've since used it a bunch. It works great for my motorcycle and bike carrier, and in a pinch, it turns out to be a great way to move lots of stuff that you wouldn't want to pick up or wouldn't be able to carry in the bed, as long as you don't mind dragging it. Sometimes you want to move something heavy, like I don't know how much these telephone pole sections weigh, but it's something that I know I don't want to lift up and try and carry on that bed. So this is a yard sled. Let's see how well this is going to work. And roll. Roll. Oh. Here, let's use some physics here. Just clip that right onto the hitch. Let's see what happens. Now in this case, I might have been able to drag that pole with just a strap, but the sled keeps the front face from digging into the ground, and it would be great for lots of other bulky things that wouldn't fit in the bed, or that you just don't want to have to lift all the way up into the bed. Like, for example, if you only have a half dozen cinder blocks to move, lifting them into the bed isn't terrible for a young, fit, strapping young lad like me. Your words, not mine. But if you had a whole pallet of cinder blocks, then it'd be a lot nicer to just toss them on a yard sled and drag them along behind a UTV instead. And as one last example before I finish the towing section, here's why I was loading up all those cinder blocks in the first place. Towing around all sorts of things is really convenient for different tasks. This is a yard drag that we use for light grading work. This area here I just cleared our mulch and sand piles from, so we could put another container on this spot, but I wanted to get it closer to level. So with the Kandi and that drag harrow, it was as easy as just driving around. Now it does work better with a little more weight on it, and we like this one because it's not too aggressive compared to some other harrows. You can drag it across the pasture grass without it really pulling much up, but when you get it back on the dirt, it really does a good job knocking down the high spots and filling in the low spots. I'll include links to all these tools in the description below this video in case anyone wants to check them out, and as usual, I don't recommend products unless it's something I actually use, and just like these Kandi UTVs, I've tested and been impressed with this stuff. All of these things just make great additions to UTVs like this and let you use them for so many more tasks. Now obviously any self-respecting side-by-side needs a winch, right? I don't have any mud here to simulate getting stuck in, but let's say that, I was on a muddy trail and I got stuck here. Let's test out this winch. Now this is a 3,500 pound rated winch. It's not huge, but the whole machine only weighs like 1,800 pounds. There is a knob to free spool down here. They got this winch really shrouded in here, so it's a little tricky to get to, but if you shove your arm up inside it, you can get there and undo it. Once in free spool, I can pull out my winch cable here. And then, of course, you do want to use some type of strap to make sure you're protecting the tree. I think I have one back here. So you grab your strap, get your winch cable. I did park on a bit of a stump back there. I know it's not the same as being in mud, but maybe it'll give us a little more resistance here. All right, so send your strap around the tree. And we'll hook that sucker up. All right, strapped in. And don't forget to take your winch off of free spool, otherwise you're not going anywhere. There we go. Now there's no remote for this, so you gotta be in the vehicle. It'd be nice if there was a remote, but hey, what can you do? So now we're gonna winch in. All right. So obviously that stump there isn't, the same thing as being stuck in mud. Also, I know it's hard to see in the camera here, but we are going a little bit uphill here. So we did have a little bit more resistance on the winch here. Now, 3,500 pounds, something like that for the winch. Not super strong. This is not a big sucker. Of course, you can always double it back on itself, do a double line run if you've got a snatch block. We do have these nice, mounting points up here, so it'd be easy to do that, and then you can double the power of the winch right there. But, this machine isn't terribly big in and of itself, so I think you got plenty of power here for any situation where you might find yourself stuck. The chance to test out both of these machines at the same time was pretty awesome. It's really just sort of a personal preference of which of these designs you like better. But since not everyone gets the chance to test out two of these at once, I felt it was my moral obligation for my dad and I to make the most of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Of course, this is all in good fun, but it's also a great example of how maneuverable these machines are at both high and low speed. Even so though, believe it or not, UTV soccer is a lot harder than it looks. And while we started with a one-on-one classic approach, we sort of morphed into a last touch before getting it in either goal counts. Also, I can't say enough good things about how well made that giant 6-foot soccer ball is. We slammed that thing for an hour or so, and it held up amazingly. But after an hour, we were surprisingly exhausted. It feels like a full-body workout to constantly slam around like that, which means we had earned a chance to relax a bit.
You bring the drinks?
See what I got. I hit the tree with the drone.
Where's the drone?
It's at the base of the tree.
You've been having more drone issues here lately.
Yeah, well, they don't hand out pilot's license to everybody. Alright, let's talk about charging. Now this thing is at 90% charge still after all of this driving around I've been doing, so it's still pretty well charged. Let's plug it in just to see how this works. Now the charger here is your basic J1772, which basically means it's the original standard for electric vehicles in the US. There's a charge port down here, pop that open, and you just plug this right in. Now on the back side of this you'll find a, where is it? Here it is. This is basically your standard 120 volt plug that all of us have on every wall outlet in our house. So this just plugs into any wall outlet, any extension cord. I have a cord here. I just have this plugged into a 120 volt outlet. If you do use an extension cord, just make sure you uncoil it so it's not coiled up. So I plug that into my 120, and this goes straight into the side of the machine. I'll probably see something pop up on the screen. Yep, there it is, screen turn on. It says charging, state of charge 90%. You're supposed to hear a fan kick on. Yeah, and I hear a fan kick on. So it's charging. Now another option is it comes with this 240 volt adapter to plug in right here in place of the 120. I think this is the, let's see, it's the N1450P, the NEMA 1450. I don't have one of these plugs. I think we have the other 240 in the shop for the welder, but basically I don't have this one, so I can't use it. You could probably get an adapter for this as well. I think that it's supposed to charge in 8 hours on 120, and so if you plug it in 240, I guess that's going to shorten the charge time. And also if you already have an electric vehicle charging station in your home, your garage, your shop, whatever, then you'll probably get a quicker charge time too. But even like 8 hours, you know, you use this during the day, you charge it at night, that's probably fine. Also, I should mention that the way they have the door designed, you can close the door while it's charging, so you don't actually have to leave the door open. One thing I think that's important to talk about is maintenance with a vehicle like this. And that's one of the things I love most about a UTV that's electric, is that I just don't have to worry about maintenance as much. You don't have all of the same engine issues that you have with a gasoline combustion engine. It's not that you can completely ignore these things. If you look in the manual, I think it said every 20 hours checking the brake lines and every 50 hours replacing the oil in the gearbox. If you check on each motor, there's a gearbox and there's a little plug at the bottom that you open up and you can drain and replace the oil, but it's not something that you have to do that often. If you figure an average of like, I don't know, 20 miles an hour, every 50 hours, that's 1,000 miles, right? So every 1,000 miles or so, and you're just not going that far or that often on a vehicle like this, right? Like you're using it around a property like we are. It's not like you're driving to work every day. So there's just not that much you have to do. Yeah, of course, there's all the little things in the beginning, the first few hours, you check all the nuts and bolts, you make sure everything's staying tight and etc. But it's just not something you have to worry about day to day, the way you have to worry about all the issues with a typical gas engine, like the carburetor, the air filter, the spark plugs, changing the oil, all that stuff that you have to do a lot more frequently. So for me, it's just nice to have so much fewer maintenance. It's basically the same maintenance you'd have in an electric power drill, right? Like it's just a battery and a motor. There's not that much to go wrong. So I've been using the Kandi Innovator as a bit of a saw table out here. It works pretty well for that, but the one thing I wish they had included was an inverter running off of this big battery. It's got like 10 kilowatt hours. So if they had had a plug back here to run 120 volt appliances, that would have been just perfect. Instead, I've been using this Van Powers portable battery here, and it works all right. I don't have a battery saw, so I can run this corded saw here. But man, if they had just put a 120 volt outlet here with an inverter running off that big battery, that would have been beautiful. Come on, Kandi, add it, please. I haven't done an inside tour yet, so I guess I should go ahead and do that. We've got a pretty large infotainment center there. Down here we've got most of our controls. Here's the gear shift, so you got drive, neutral, and reverse. This is where your blinkers are. You got your headlights and your high beams. This is where you control that dump bed. Up starts the bed dumping, down brings it back and locks it back into place. You got your winch controls, and then your hazard lights here. This is where you click your little key fob. There's no keys, so you need your little click key fob here, and then you can do the start stop. And then you got a USB charging port. Here we've got both the USB-C and a USB-A. I guess this is for your phone. Oh, I have some trash left in there. Here's the glove box, got the manual and stuff in there. It is probably the smallest glove box I've ever seen, so don't expect to hold too much in there. Here are our pedals, got our gas pedal, brake pedal, and this is our parking brake. And of course by gas I mean electron pedal. There are 1,000 warning labels up here for all the things you're not supposed to do. Don't be under 16, don't drink and drive, don't sit on the back, lots of stuff you shouldn't do. The door handles are only accessible from the inside, so you just reach through the door anytime you want to open it. Of course, you got your seat belts. They are DOT, though this is not necessarily a street legal vehicle. Headrests, what else? There's only 2 seat belts, even though you kind of got this middle bump here, though I don't think you're really supposed to put a third person. And then up here, if I can do this one-handed, you got a fold down little console for some drinks. Stick, I don't know, your phone or something there. And then in the back you got the bed. Oh, and you got these detents here so you can flip up the windshield, get a little more air. I mentioned that it looks like you can get 3 people on the bench, and since my mom deserves a chance to test drive the Kandi too, we gave it a shot. Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay when you push the gas, so you can just put it gently and you'll feel it slowly take off.
Yeah. So where are we headed to, boys?
Wherever you'd like. It's an off-road vehicle, so you choose your own adventure.
Yeah,
Okay.
go between these 2 right here.
Yeah. Okay.
Thread the needle.
Thread the needle. Pull your arms in.
And if the steering wheel's too high, it does tilt down if you want.
Oh, okay.
So I think you push that down. And
Oh, much better. We're going to do the chicane, so hold on. Feel like I'm a little wrong.
I don't think they race on the grass.
So you said this thing will do 40?
probably not best to do it off-road.
No, I would say back here, not a good idea.
Yeah, on-road we got it up to 40. I mean, it's got pretty good suspension. It's got, like 4 A-arm suspensions, but I still wouldn't want to hit a big bump at 40 miles an hour.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah?
Yeah, I can go to the mailbox with this easily.
Can you take the garbage out?
It handles nicely.
Yeah,
Round
good steering.
profile. Very responsive.
Pretty tight turning radius.
I'll take one in pink.
And there is actually a seat belt.
Yeah. We're living life on the wild side.
Yeah, the wild side at 7 miles an hour.
Yeah.
All right,
On the
fine.
grass.
All right, fine.
Now she's got it at 10
I'm
there.
up to 9.
You caught 10 for a split second.
Should I put the brake on or anything?
I think we're going to roll downhill.
Right.
As it turns out, she seems to be much more of a fan than I had expected.
These have more traditional utilitarian headlights. Those are more like a fancy car or something.
Yeah, it's got a little more design on that one. Also, I think
This
that
one?
front bar lights up also, so it's got kind of a light bar going across the front. One thing that's interesting about the throttle response here in the Kandi is that it's got a really soft throttle ramp to it. And by that I mean when you press on the throttle or the gas pedal, you don't immediately lurch forward. If anything, there's about a second or so where you feel the power slowly ramping up until you hit full power. And on the one hand, that's kind of nice because, when you're towing or when you're trying to back up the hitch or do anything that needs a little more precision movement, you're not lurching or jumping, you can very gently move around. On the other hand, you don't get that fun, launch sensation right when you press the pedal, and you're not going to be slinging mud or throwing gravel the way you might be used to on a gas UTV or on a more powerful electric UTV like a Polaris or something like that. If I had to guess, I'd say they probably programmed that in to be a little more gentle off the start, to just be easier on the components. If you're just dropping the hammer every time, that's a lot of wear and tear on the gearbox. And so by having a slower and more gentle throttle ramping response, it's just going to be easier on the components and better for longevity. You don't get that crazy fun start, but it's probably better in the long term. There are a few more cool things I want to show off, but since you guys have been kind enough to watch me play with big boy toys for nearly half an hour already, I won't take up too much more of your time, and I'll just rapid fire through these things. Now, I did not get a chance to hill climb test since this is Florida and it's flat as a pancake, but I did find the highest point of elevation in the state, and it made it most of the way up, and probably would have summited if there was more traction in a mulch pile. Also, as I was considering this model and researching it before getting one, I found this guy on YouTube whose channel, The King Rexway, does some great hill climbing tests on this vehicle, also on the road, and he found he could still get into the mid-30s of mile per hour uphill, so props to him for having an awesome channel. You guys should definitely check it out. Let's see, what else? We also found a really slick universal UTV cover that works well for it, which is good because Florida also rains a lot. And while they say you can get the Kandi wet and that in fact you should wash it, but just to avoid spraying water into the motor connections, it still seems like a good idea to not let it sit out in crazy storms. If you do get rained on while you're out though, the canopy does have this nice molded gutter that directs water towards 2 holes over the windshield, so the rain doesn't just run off the sides or back and drip on you, and instead it all goes down onto the windshield. Oh, and lastly, we found it was a great way to get the trash cans down the long private driveway out to the street, and then rescue them again the next day. My dad even rigged up a system so he could lift up the heavy trash cans using the dump bed feature. So there's a lot of cool customizations and hidden little features you can find along the way. Alright, so I've had a lot of fun testing these vehicles out, and we've had some fun in games, but at the end of the day, these are work vehicles, and I think from my testing, I found that they work really well for utility tasks. All sorts of things we were doing around the property, getting straw, raking up grass, just general moving things around, towing, all sorts of different jobs that we do on a daily basis. The Kandis were up for the task and more, not to mention all the fun that they were to ride around. So all in all, I gotta say, I'm really impressed with these vehicles. In fact, I've been trying to find things to complain about because I already know that the comments are gonna have a bunch of people calling me a shill for Kandi, like, oh, he's just saying all the nice things about it. Like, I'm trying to find things to complain about. I would love to see them put a 120 volt outlet in this thing. It would have been a great addition. I can't really fault them for not doing it. They give us a couple USBs. There's not that much else I can complain about. There's a little bit of rattling. When you ride around, you hit bumps, you hear the split part of the windshield here kind of going up and down a little bit. You hear the suspension, but you know, you hear those things on an electric vehicle because you just don't have the noise of a gas vehicle, the exhaust and the engine to hear. So, you know, there's not a lot to complain about these things. I'm really pretty darn impressed with them. Of course, the last thing is the price at $14,000-ish. You know, kind of depends. These are in different dealers. You got to check your local price, but I think it's $14,000 MSRP on Kandi's site, if I'm not mistaken. That's also pretty reasonable. Now, you can get, you know, a cheaper Polaris if you get like the 570 or the 750 or whatever. You know, you can get those for what, like 10, 12,000 or something. But if you're getting like a Polaris Ranger 1000 or, you know, Polaris XP, those are already going to be costing you, you know, $14,000, $16,000, $18,000, $20,000, depending what kind of packages you get. So, you know, this is a fairly reasonable price for a pretty capable UTV. And that's comparing to gas, right? Like if you compare it to the very few other electric UTVs out there, I've tested the Polaris Ranger XP Kinetic, Polaris's electric Ranger, and that is an amazing vehicle. Like, hats off to the engineers that designed that thing. It is incredible. But it's also $30,000 to $35,000. So if you want 80 or 100 horsepower, you gotta pay some serious money to get it. These are plenty powerful, and at 14, they're just a lot less than some of those other electric UTVs. So basically, all in all, I just can't find that much to complain about these, even though I've tried. They work great, they feel good, they're comfortable, and I think they're great for utility work. Now, last but not least, before I go, it's time for the E-Bikes for Good giveaway. This is the part of my videos that I love the most because it's a chance to give a free e-bike to someone who needs it. I started this program as a way to connect people who need a leg up in life, who need a form of transportation, but just can't afford it. This time, I'm really excited to have partnered with Kandi to be giving away one of their e-bikes. The Kandi Trail King E1500 is a really cool electric mini bike that is surprisingly affordable for the specs. For less than $1,000 you're getting a 1500 watt capable electric mini bike that can hit 20 miles an hour quite easily, has the power to climb hills, offers full suspension, hydraulic disc brakes, a color LED screen, and a bunch of other features. There are plenty of dinky 250 watt e-bikes out there that cost more than this, but Kandi's kinda gone off the deep end with making off-road electric vehicles that offer great bang for your buck, so this one definitely fits the mold. I've been riding this bike for about a week now, and it is really fun to rip around on. While it's not a traditional e-bike in the conventional sense, since it has pegs instead of pedals, it does have a VIN number, and so depending on your local laws, you might even be able to get it treated like a moped. But even just for cruising around on dirt roads and other off-road areas, it's a great way to get some comfortable transportation without the substantial cost of a typical motorbike and without the maintenance or reliability issues of a gasoline-powered mini bike specifically. I'm really excited to partner with Kandi for this giveaway, and I think their generosity is a perfect match for what I've been trying to do with this program, which is to help bring independent transportation to people who don't have another way to get around. The goal of this program is to connect people who need a leg up in life with a free e-bike. Someone who needs a way to get around, get to doctor's appointments, visit family, that sort of thing, but they just can't afford a car or they don't have good public transportation where they live. An e-bike is very likely the right answer for them, and so that's the goal of this program, to help people out with e-bikes. So how is this going to work? If you are somebody who needs an e-bike to get around but you just can't afford one, I want you to head on over to my site, EbikeSchool.com/ebikesforgood. Just fill out the form there. There's nothing you need to pay. There's nothing you need to sign up for. It's all free. Just fill out the form. Let me know your situation and why an e-bike would really help improve your station in life right now. I'll go through those entries and a randomly selected deserving entrant will be chosen to win a free e-bike. And now I get to announce the winner of the free e-bike from my last video. And the randomly selected deserving entrant is... Bo T. So congratulations. I'm really excited to be getting that e-bike out to you, and everyone watching this video right now, if you want to win a free e-bike, make sure you head on over to EbikeSchool.com/ebikes for good, fill out the form, and maybe you can be chosen at the end of my next video. Now the real last but not least, it's time to announce the winner of my book giveaway from my last video. The randomly selected commenter is VJ. So congratulations, just let me know which one of my books you'd like. You can choose from DIY Lithium Batteries, DIY Solar Power, The Ultimate Do-It-Yourself E-Bike Guide, or my latest book, The Electric Bike Manifesto. And anybody else who wants a chance to win one of my books for free, all you gotta do is put a comment down below this video, say anything you'd like, and hopefully you'll be the randomly chosen commenter at the end of my next video. And if you don't wanna wait that long to hopefully win a copy of one of my books, you can always find them on Amazon. All right, thanks for watching everybody. I'll see you here next time.
Thanks for watching Bike School.